Welcome to Down the Garden Path. I'm your host, Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and plant lover. I enjoy discussing down to earth tips and advice to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. And I also aim to bring you interesting and relevant topics to educate you all about the landscaping and horticultural industry. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Down the Garden Path. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I'd like to introduce you to Brandie, the Suburban Gardenista. She's an avid gardener who has a passion for supporting pollinators with native plants and loves sharing her learnings through podcasts, workshops, and social media. And you can find her on her YouTube channel and Instagram at the Suburban Gardenista. Welcome to the show, Brandie.
Thank you so much for having me, Joanne. This is very exciting.
I'm excited to talk to you about native plants. I have a controversial opinion about them, but I watched some of your videos and you've gotten me excited. As a landscape designer, I always sneak in whether a client wants them or not, a native plant or two or three, and I do know the value. So why don't we start off telling me about your journey? Like, how did you go from becoming a gardener to becoming interested in native plants?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I started gardening about 20 years ago or so. I moved into a home that had pretty much no plants. And I grew up in a home that was surrounded by plants. My mom had beautiful gardens and I admired them so much. And I probably took them for granted a little bit. I just enjoyed it. And then when I moved into my first home, there was nothing there. So I needed to fill that space with greenery and flowers and all the beauty that is a garden. But then as I started learning, I realized that every plant that I planted had a certain special list of requirements. And I really
Ah.
wanted to dig in, no pun intended, and learn about each of the plants that I'm planting. What makes them happy? Where do they want to grow? All that what they can be paired with, etc. And then through this process and through planting and learning, I encountered native plants. I found a new plant that was given to me and I was starting to learn about it. And it was native plant. And I started connecting. Well, what does that mean? What is the difference between what I've been planting and native plants? And
What
why
do you
is there a
remember what that
difference?
plant was? Do you remember?
Yes, it was obedient plant. So that was my
Ooh.
gateway plant into native plant gardening. I
Which
hope
you
everyone.
quickly learned was not very obedient, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is the best part of that plant is that it is disobedient in many ways,
Yeah.
but it is obedient in that like the flower heads will move where you put them, and that's why it's called obedient plant, not because it behaves whatsoever. It's a very aggressive plant and can reseed, and I love it. It just means that it will grow well, and then I share it with others, and then it's in their gardens. So yeah, I got obedient plant. I started learning about the importance and the impact of what native plants can do for the local ecosystem, where I thought I was supporting pollinators with all the
Mhm.
plants that I had, but I really started to realize that in order to support the native pollinators that are in our natural ecosystems, they really need those native plants because they have that like symbiotic relationship that has evolved for years. And I started learning and learning and learning more about this and realized that I needed to incorporate native plant gardening into my home garden in a suburban garden. That's why I'm the suburban gardenista is I'm just in kind of a regular garden space and you can still use native plants in that context. And I think some people get a little nervous. What is this? Is it weeds? Is it going to take over?
Yes.
But you can super incorporate it. And yeah, I just kind of, it evolved from there. And I started with one probably 6 or 7 years ago. And now I have
Oh,
over like 70 different kinds of native plants in my pretty small garden space. Like you can do a lot with a small space.
yes, you really can. Oh, I think it's actually more fun that to
Yeah.
do that. Like, I think it is to do that because the big spaces, it's shockingly harder. I don't know. Well, that is interesting. And we talked a little bit before the show. It's not a completely native garden, right? You do have other plants and shrubs. Um,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
are you transitioning to be 100% or are you open to being a bit of a mix?
Yeah, I think that mainly like Definitely, it takes a long time for these plants to get established, especially when you're growing them from seed or you've got little plugs. I have a red bud tree that's like 3.5 feet tall right now. It's
Yeah.
going to be 20 feet in 10 years, but it takes a lot of time. So I'm being patient. I want to have as many native plants as I can. So as things grow, you'll see, like I do a native plant garden tour every month, and so I'm taking things out, I'm moving things in. And so over time, I'd like to have more natives than not. I'll be moving some of the non-natives out, but really kind of focusing on invasives too, and removing invasives when I learn. I had planted all sorts of invasives before I knew any better.
Yes.
I had English ivy. I've got vinca or periwinkle that I'm still trying to get out of my garden. There's lily of the valley that I'm
Yeah.
struggling with. So I'm just doing my best to make sure that those ones are gone, and then encouraging the native plants. And then, I've got my hostas, but I'm trying to balance that with other things like ferns or Canada anemone, and playing
Yes.
with like design and what works in my space.
Yes. Yes. Now, how do you handle? So this is my one of my, things that I think is a misconception that I worry about for non-gardeners who say they want native plants, is that the many native plants, I don't know if invasive is the right word, aggressive maybe. I mean, there's many that do seed. There's many that are aggressive. I mean, Canada anemone can potentially be aggressive. And that's why sometimes I think the small space is better because there's only so much place it can go, right? Like, whereas when it's a
Mhm.
big spot, it's like all over the lawn, that type of thing. So how do you balance those challenges and that communication? Because I mean, I'm dealing with people who want a garden, but the first words out of everybody's mouth is they want low maintenance, right?
Mhm. Yes, for
And,
sure.
and I say, it's low maintenance is about the right plant in the right spot, whether it's native or non-native. But I think sometimes people get too excited about native plants without really understanding them, and knowing what is aggressive versus what isn't aggressive. Like, do you have concerns about that in your own garden?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've heard, I'm a part of a couple different native plant kind of groups, and you hear people say like, "What's one native plant that you wish you never planted?" Like there are absolutely some plants that are very aggressive that some people think are just a big pain in the butt, and absolutely they're aggressive. Technically, in the terminology world with native plants, they can't be invasive. As invasive, this is the thing that this word, in some cases people recognize it as a very common word. It's invasive, it's invading, it's a pain in the butt. But in the native plant world, that means that it will have a negative impact on a natural ecosystem. And so that's why, like, the terminology, you'll
Mm,
see arguments all the time, it's not invasive, it's aggressive, and that's where that's coming from.
yes,
So
yes.
but absolutely there are native plants that are bullies in the garden. Virginia creeper, some people are like, I hate it, and some people are like, I love it. So it's definitely right plant, right place, knowing what to expect. So for example, milkweed, people are like, I want to plant milkweed to support
Mm,
the monarch
perfect
butterfly.
example.
Right, exactly. And there are some milkweeds that are very aggressive, and then there are some that are quite contained. And so I think it's a bit of like, we need to do some research. It's not just like jump to the plant and put it in the garden, because you
Yeah.
might be regretting it. The common milkweed, it sends down runners, and it can pull out a runner like 6 feet away from the mother plant. So for me, I don't mind that plant in my boulevard garden. Now, where I'm growing it, it's not as tall because my boulevard garden is pretty depleted of nutrients. so so it's not that tall. It's like under 3 feet, which I think is the requirement for my boulevard garden where I'm located. But if you have there's different milkweeds for different spaces. So my butterfly milkweed, or the orange milkweed, is much smaller, and it's contained. It has a long taproot, and it is not spreading very far at all. And then the same with my swamp milkweed, one of my favorite plants, smells like cotton candy. It's so beautiful. It's like growing in a nice clump, and it looks quite beautiful, quite contained. So you just need to kind of, again, find right plant for right place. My Canada anemone, everyone says this is an aggressive plant like crazy, and it is not growing as much as I want it to grow. But
Yes.
where I have it, if it was overtaking, I'm totally fine with it. So yeah,
Mhm.
it is learning what plants are more aggressive than not. And that's kind of what I like to incorporate into my garden tours. Like I will say, for example, I've got it's called creeping foam flower because it can creep, but it had in 5 years, it is still like the size of a pizza. It has
Ah,
not it has not creeped very much at all. And again, because of the conditions I have, it's not perfect for that space. It
yes.
needs more water. It needs like maybe a little more sun, and it's really staying quite small in a spot where I'd be very happy for it to spread out. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that is the challenge with all plants, right? They
yeah,
getting them to behave the way they're supposed to behave. Yeah, maybe, and the soil, right? Like maybe the soil in some cases, the soil is too good, right? And they
absolutely.
do better in poor soil. Like I think that might be the case with Canada anemone. I think
Mhm.
if it's crappy soil, it's amazing how they go. But yet if you've got fairly good garden soil, it's happy to not, to just
Yeah.
survive. So yeah, so that can be a challenge. Have your neighbors noticed?
Well, my neighbors have noticed because I'm trying to infiltrate their gardens as well.
Yes,
So
I do the
I
same.
yes, I like to share my plants. So I will fall sow a bunch of seeds, and then I'll have way more plants than I need, and then I'll share them. So I literally brought over a couple plants yesterday to my neighbor over here, and another one to my neighbor over here. So I definitely am getting interest. I also to help people because part of this is me having my light bulb go off, trying to help other people see the benefits of this. Now, others may not love this, but I personally think that signage is really helpful. Like, so I've got some signs. I've got a pollinator sign saying this is a pollinator garden, and I'm in a city that has a bee city recognition, so I've got my bee city sign. And then for some plants, now this might be the nerdiest thing, but that's okay. I am just walking right into it. I do have little signs that say what the plant is because I do want
Okay.
people to see the sign, to see the plants and think, oh, that's pretty. I've never seen that before. And then maybe it starts a conversation, or maybe they go and say,
Mm,
I'm going to look that up. And then they might get some
yeah.
for their gardens as well. So, yeah,
Okay.
I
That's good.
definitely,
I always worry people are going to take them,
yeah,
so
no,
I've never been, every time I'm out there, people stop and ask what things are. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, I haven't had any problem with people taking anything. We even have like a little lending library out front, so it kind of is like
Um,
an opportunity for engagement. And yeah, I think I want to share this information, and I'm open to chatting. So it's the kind of thing too where careful if you want to chat with me about this because you might not be ready for how into it I am.
Oh, that is so good. That's so good. Well, it is good for you, and it's good to have explored that your community is a bee community, and I think that's all very important. Tell me about the pollinator partnership program.
Yeah. Oh, it was fantastic. I would highly recommend this program to
Okay.
anyone that wants to learn more about pollinators and supporting pollinators in their home garden or any context. This program really shares information in a way that is good for like massive restoration projects, for unique projects that might be like in throwaways or under hydro cuts and stuff like that. It is just a fabulous source of information, but it's a program where you do essentially, I think there was 8 classes
Oh,
like
okay.
university level classes, like
Oh,
really
really?
high
Okay.
quality info and people who are sharing the info. So you do these classes, but to get your certification, so it's a pollinator stewardship certification through Pollinator Partnership Canada. To get the certification, you do the classes, and then you have to build habitat. You have to actually implement what you're learning and build some kind of habitat, whether that be in your garden space or in a community garden or a restoration project, whatever is within your ability. And then there's a third component of either education or advocacy. So I
Okay.
really love the structure of this this whole partnership, pollinator partnership steward certification, pardon me, because it you learn, then you use the learnings to build something related to that, and then you need to share your info. So I put together a little YouTube video, and that was part of how I wanted to share the information. So I'll share that video with you because it's one of my favorites because I put so much effort into it as part of this certification program.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just so much great learnings that you could really just start implementing right away. So yeah, absolutely recommend it. They have new cohorts every year, and so I believe they start in like February with registration.
Really?
So
Okay.
it's
I
really a
definitely
good time to start looking
yeah.
into it.
Yeah, because I've looked into the David Suzuki, Butterfly Way, I believe,
Yep, yep.
program, and, it can kind of unofficially been part of that, but, yeah, I always chicken out when it comes to the signage, right? Because I don't know, but,
Oh, but you don't even need to do signage with
yeah, well,
this.
that
It's
one you do.
yeah,
They send you
yeah.
signs and stuff, but this one I'm shocked I have not heard about it. So I'm excited to learn more
Oh yeah.
about it and that it was that good of a program. So and I
Oh
love
yeah,
that
yeah.
the
So great.
hands-on portion, right?
Oh yeah, and they have the program is great, but they have so many resources. There's eco-region guides, so you can look at like these guides where it's for the particular regions, and they will list what pollinator plants are what plants are native to those regions, and what pollinators they're supporting, and what conditions all the plants need. And so those are really great resources as well. So even if you're not interested in doing the program itself, go to Pollinator Partnership Canada. There's one for the States too. There's Pollinator Partnership in the States as well. And
Oh,
they
good.
both
Okay.
have just a ton of resources. Signage, they have some templates that you can use too. So all sorts of stuff. Yeah, they're
Oh,
fabulous.
wonderful. Wonderful. Now, is that what got you started on YouTube?
Well, not as much. I kind of started on YouTube a little earlier than my discovery of this program. I started on YouTube about 2020, and I just kind of was again doing my research into my plants, watching some videos, thinking, you know what? I think I could do this. I'm just thinking, I actually, as snarky as this seems, thought, oh, I could do better than that.
Yeah.
And then I made many videos that were
The
just
same.
good. They're mediocre might be a good word for it. I think you think, oh, I can do that, but if you're gardening, it doesn't mean you're going to be good at creating videos,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I am
Or
doing my
doing
best
podcasts. Yeah,
or doing
absolutely.
podcasts, like when I started, terrible sound quality, I'm telling you, every time I go outside and do a video, someone is using a lawnmower or playing basketball or a leaf blower or something. Or I do a lot by the road, always cars going by. So I'm
Or
doing my
or
best.
it's recycling day. Like you wait for the
Oh,
perfect
yeah,
temperature, the
exactly.
perfect day, the perfect
Oh,
things in
yeah.
bloom, the perfect amount of
Yeah.
light, and then it's recycling day and there's like
Oh,
recycling
yeah.
bins everywhere. Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Totally.
So,
Totally.
yes, so I am contributing to the mediocrity, but I think more that it's like contributing to the real life. This is real life experiences, and
Yeah, and I
it's
think
not
that
perfect. Yeah,
yeah, and
just
I
trying
think
to
that is
help.
better. Yeah, I think that's better because I think if it's a perfectly posh, um, then I think it sets expectations to homeowners or to new gardeners, right? Like I think it is better. Like even when you watch those like computer help YouTube videos and the poshy people with all the I'm thinking, oh, they're not explaining properly, but it's the person whose office looks like whatever, right? And they practice I'm like, oh yeah, they get it. Like they know they don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
They know how to teach me how to do that in 2 minutes. So
Right, yeah,
I
I'm just yeah,
think it's
just
just
trying to
really
help share, like,
yeah.
techniques or info in a way that is approachable. That's
Yes.
my goal.
Yes. And what made you I love the idea of your monthly garden tours. Now, I've been recording, I never record me in them. I know I've been told I need to, but I'll do like videos of my garden at different seasons or different times of year and I kind of show people that and I've been doing that in like not consistently, inconsistently, I guess. But I loved how you do, because I like looking at pictures, because every June is not the same, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
every
yeah.
right, June of 2024 and June of 2025, and this July, like the heat and the dryness and the drought.
Oh yeah,
Although it depends, your drought could have been different than my drought, right?
yeah.
You're in one part of Ontario and I'm in another part of Ontario. So yeah, so is that something more you started as like a personal diary for yourself?
Yeah, well, a little bit, but more just because, again, because native plants to some is kind of a new thing. I wanted
Right.
to show how the native plants grow over the whole growing season. So it's not just like this is what it looks like when it's in bloom, but this is what it looks like in June, and this is what it looks like in July. For example, another one with the butterfly milkweed. Butterfly milkweed comes up a little later than some of the other plants. So it's interesting to hear that others who are watching, who are learning, people comment a lot on these videos. So they don't have a ton of views like some of the instructional videos, but there's people who are watching because they want to see how does your plant look at this point in the year? Because mine looks like this. Is that the same? So I think it's helpful to compare. And then another thing that I didn't quite realize, but one of my viewers commented recently how they just really liked to see the plants at their itsy bitsy stages, just
Mm,
growing from seed so that they could know what's coming up in their garden. Maybe they've planted some seeds last fall and things are popping up and they don't know what they are. And so
right.
it's helpful to say, oh, well, this is what a tiny little, a prairie smoke is or whatever. And so that they're
Mhm.
not like, oh, that could be a weed. Maybe I'll pull it. Or
Right.
even, I often recommend if you have a volunteer plant, a plant that just kind of appeared from a bird or a critter or whatever, let it go a little bit so you know what it is. In some cases, it might be something bad, like an invasive plant, pull it out. And in some cases, it might be something that is welcome in your garden. So I've gotten some asters that way. I have
Mm.
like just a ton of asters right now that are beautiful. Like they're just on their way out, but just beautiful blooms covered in beautiful flowers. That was just a volunteer. So and now I've encouraged it and kind of spread some seeds out elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I just discovered that I have, is it called mullein or mullen?
Mullen,
Um,
yes.
yeah, yeah. So that has found itself into my garden, and through my garden tours, I've had people say, "Ah, I think that might be mullen," and which is not native, and so I'll be going and pulling that one out. So,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it's helpful to just kind of see what comes as opposed to just pull every little thing. And yeah, so back to the native plant garden tours. Um, I think it was mainly just to show how things evolve over time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
people are
that's
watching and
great.
chatting. So
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
good.
And so primarily, do you start your seeds, like when you're buying plants, or when you started this journey, did you buy, plugs you mentioned, or did you from seeds? Because some of the native plants are actually harder, right, than hybrids
Oh,
to
yes. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. And some, yeah. So for people who want to have native plants in their gardens, it really depends on how patient you are. If you just want a garden that looks like fabulous right from the start, then I would definitely recommend getting bigger, larger plants as much as possible. Divisions are really great for that. If you have somebody else in your world that has the native plants that you'd like, maybe they're ready to divide.
Yeah.
There's lots of plant swaps like on Facebook.
Mhm.
So I'm in Ontario, and there's an Ontario native plant and seed exchange. So that's a way to do that as well. um, Growing from seed, super inexpensive. You can get seeds for free sometimes from
Yeah.
seed swaps. The cheaper to buy if you're going to purchase. But yeah, it for sure can take some time. So I've done a bit of everything.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
I plant things by seed, I know that it's going to take a while to get to blooms. Like it for my milkweeds, for my butterfly milkweed and my swamp milkweed, which I've planted a lot of from seed, it can take 2 or 3 years to see blooms. For trillium, for example, it might be 10 years.
Yes. Yes.
So or
Yeah,
7, actually, I think it's
7, it's
7 years, but
7,
either
yeah.
way, a lot of long time.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in a different part of my life at that time,
Yeah,
so
oh, no, definitely. And I
yeah.
think from when you things have changed, so I'll let our listeners know because they're listening to it now in 2025, and
Mhm.
they can find, we can find more, nurseries have caught up with the demand, growers in Ontario have caught up with the demand. But 5 or 6 years ago,
Yeah.
not, yeah, and right, you were only able to get, there's a native plant nursery near me, and I was always people were all excited to get their native plants in my garden club, and they'd be like these little 3-inch little
Uh,
like nothings. And I've been like, no, like I don't have that much patience, and I know my clients do not have that much patience, right?
yeah.
But now, and I have a good relationship with my one main grower that I'm like, yeah, and especially shrubs too. So it's not just perennials.
Mhm.
There are native plant shrubs and trees, obviously. But
Mhm.
I think people know about trees and people talk about perennials, but I feel like they miss the shrubs,
Oh, yeah. I have
right?
a
And
spice bush that's, like,
rice
this big
bush.
right now, and,
Yeah,
I've got a bush honeysuckle that's just wee, so, yeah, it definitely takes time, and you have
yeah,
to kind of envision what it's gonna look like later, and then there's different ways, and I'm sure, like, as a landscape designer, like, there's different ways that you can play with the landscape amidst that waiting time. You can put pots out. You can put some
yes,
annuals in. You can put something that won't grow that wildly, and then you can take it out and transplant it, move it elsewhere, right? So I've done and incorporated a bunch of that, or incorporated things like when I've started many of my gardens just from nothing,
yeah,
and so I've planted all these itsy bitsy plants, and they look real sad the first season, but
yeah,
um, that I'll incorporate some logs and like some like wood to add some beauty to the design, but also that's adding to like this the biome, like they're
yeah. The
decomposing
habitat.
naturally.
Yeah,
The bugs are yeah, living in there. Maybe some fungi are growing in there and whatnot. So that can help as well. So you can be creative amongst the waiting time.
yes,
Um, and yeah, again with different sources as well. It's so great seeing them in more popular garden centers, and
yes,
just remembering that like if you want to buy native, that you want to focus on just seeing that scientific name. So like if you're
right.
going to buy butterfly milkweed, it would be like Asclepias tuberosa, but it wouldn't say like Asclepias tuberosa holiday like party
Yes,
whatever, like orange, wild orange or something. It's the quotation that shows that it's been altered in some way, hybridized,
yes,
cultivated. So just
yes.
kind of trying to focus in on that as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, so paying attention to the botanical names, right?
Hmm.
That they
Hmm.
really do mean something. And I think the thing that is the most like the beneficial of the botanical names and the most challenging is that because the common names, one plant can have 5 different common names,
Yeah,
right?
it's true for sure.
So you're not sure, like salvias, there's annual salvia, perennial salvia, native salvia, there's
Yes.
lots of salvias, but it's the botanical name. And you can take a picture of it at the garden center if you're not sure, and Google it and see. So there is a lot of information out there. So for our listeners
Mhm.
who want to really be that native,
Yeah.
I'm on the fence. I have to say, like if it has been tweaked and it's a little bit better, I'm okay with that. And your research, so I find that many of my non-natives are huge pollinators. Like like my Japanese anemone, like they
Yeah.
roll around, those bees roll around in there. I have a new to me plant that I got from a client. I took a little root out of this plant that we were getting rid of because the client was removing a garden from this area. It's a Michaelmas daisy, and it's
Ooh.
actually, I know, I have to do more research on it. But it blooms right now. Like it's just starting to bloom now in
Oh.
October. But it's a daisy. It is the typical daisy, but the foliage is much more shrub-like and
Hmm.
almost succulent. And
Ooh.
literally, I took a picture yesterday of like I think the bee spent the night in it. Like I was like out there
Oh.
late last night and he was out for the count. Like I was moving and doing stuff, and I'm like, okay, he's not going anywhere. Like he's hunkered down. So the bees are in it. Like it's something that because it's also so late in the season, right? And they are still looking for
Oh
pollen
yeah.
and looking for things. So yeah, so did you do some research on that? I know you mentioned about um pollinators, like how they, I forget how you worded it. You worded it so eloquently about the supporting, so are my plants, well, are non-natives supporting different insects or insects in
Yeah,
different ways?
yeah, absolutely. So when it comes
Whole new
to,
show, right? We could talk about
yeah,
that as a
yeah,
whole new topic.
for sure. I'll try to keep it short, but essentially, there's generalist pollinators and specialist pollinators. So the ones that are using your non-native plants will be your generalist pollinators who will use lots of different plants to get their nectar, pollen, to use the plant for different things. If they're going to host their young in the stems of, your sunflowers or whatever it might be. Um, Absolutely, those plants are supporting pollinators. If you're seeing the pollinators coming, but those are the generalist pollinators.
Okay.
The specialist pollinators, those are the ones that are picky, super picky little creatures where they will only use the nectar or get the pollen or use the plant in a specific way where certain pollinators will only use certain plants. And those are the ones that really need the support. Because, yes, absolutely, the generalist ones, they'll use all the non native plants.
Okay.
But if you think about, again, like the
The
monarch,
monarch.
it will
Yeah, it's
only use
probably the best.
milkweed.
Yeah, it's the only one. Yeah.
Swallowtail butterfly will only go on carrot family plants. So, like a native plant would be golden Alexanders for that. The spice bush butterfly will only go on spice bush. There's lots of relationships like that with bees as well. Like, so you'll have a certain bees that might be long tongue bees and they can like stick their little tongues into the flowers. Whereas if you have a flower that's altered, like let's say you have a double bloom, it might not be able to support the pollinator in the same way because of its actual physical
Yes. Like the cone
properties.
flowers, right? When they seem to have kind of fizzled
Yeah.
out, haven't they? Because people caught on. Yeah, the hybrid, yeah, I'm sure our listeners are familiar when they made the double cone
Yes.
flowers and made them in all
Exactly.
kinds of colors. Well, the native, like they still just want the purple one and they want the
That's
single
right.
bloom. They don't want the double. So yes,
Yeah.
that's a perfect example of where and they were never as hardy either, right? So they always,
Mhm.
they either didn't, like, they either died, they didn't come back, or they
Mhm.
reverted back to their, you know,
Yeah.
the
I
mom.
have I brought some books with me.
Ooh.
So these are specific for Ontario, but these are two really great books that I would recommend. The first is the Garden for the Rusty Patched Bumblebee. Oh,
Ah, yes,
yeah.
yep.
So this is by Lorraine Johnson and Sheila Kola, and this goes through native plants. This is specific to Ontario, but there's another one for Eastern North America, and maybe they have more that are they're developing for other areas as well. But it goes through and it talks about the native plants and which pollinators each native plant supports as a specialist relationship. So it has a ton of info. And then another one I would super recommend is the Gardener's Guide to Native Plants of Southern Great Lakes region. Now, this is by Rick Gray and Sean Booth. And it's a similar kind of concept where it goes through and it will show you exactly like the pictures of the native plants throughout the various, I'm a little fuzzy,
Yeah.
the various like life cycle of when it's in flower, the leaves, etc., where it's native in Southern Ontario. So these are two really great sources that I recommend all the time, and I pretty much use them like collector's guides. They are similar, but I say buy them both.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned Rick, before the show, you mentioned Rick Gray has a really good link as well that we'll have in the
Oh yeah,
show notes.
absolutely. So, if you're looking for native plant sources, Rick Gray, the author of one of the authors of this book here, he has put together a map of tons of native plant sources for all of North America. And
Ooh.
so, yeah, if we can add that to the notes for this show, it might not be easy to just say, but essentially it's the bit.ly/ Rix, RIX, NP sources, so native plant sources. So you'll include that in the link, and that is a
Yeah.
really good resource for all over North America. It's really quite incredible what he's included in there.
Excellent, excellent. Have you been, as we wrap up, because I'm careful of the time, how have you felt with your sourcing? Like, have you, you said you started a little bit from seed, and you started your little red buds and stuff like that. Do you like save up and try to like do one big thing, or you're just happy to kind of ease into it?
Oh, I definitely like to do a bunch of little things every year. I don't generally do like a big, I'll do like a big planting. Let's say like, for the past few years, every year I've kind of shrunk my lawn a little bit and added a
Mhm.
new little component. So when I do that, like I'll fill that in, but it's usually buying smaller plants. They're
Okay.
more affordable. I definitely have been caught a few times. And I think that's a thing. Sometimes when it comes to native plants, you're trying so hard to be good and buy the native plant, like the pure native variety, and then stuff happens. I'm telling you, I've grown all sorts of random things. I got seeds from someone and then it was not what I had expected. I purchased recently, I purchased too. I purchased a wild blue phlox from a garden sale, and it was said to be native plants. And I have been like, I don't think this is what this is. And throughout this season, I've seen it evolve, and it is super not wild blue phlox. I think what it is a soapwort, which I think is invasive. So,
Oh.
so you just do your best.
Yes, yes.
And yeah,
Yeah, and that can
yeah.
be the challenges with like the garden club, because garden club with my garden club here, the demand for native plants has gotten bigger and bigger, but yet when people donate them in, it's like it's such a challenge to know, is this really native, right?
Oh, yeah, and they
And
hybridize too in some cases. So, for example, I got a wild blue lupin from a pretty reputable space, and then I'm showing pictures of my lupin, and then my lupin. So lupins will hybridize with the non-natives that are in the neighborhood. So mine hybridized with somebody else's, and then the new ones that grew looked different than the mother plant. So I knew they had been hybridized, but you don't really know that until you see the flowers, right?
yes,
I
yeah.
mean, maybe if you are a super specialist, you could tell with the leaves, but like I didn't know until I saw those flowers. And now I've got all these non-native lupins. So, like there's challenges like
Yeah,
that as
yeah.
well,
But then
right?
I feel like that doesn't count, because it nature, it did that over in nature. Like that's, so I don't know. I think you can keep them. Because it natural,
Got
I
the
like
green
it's,
light.
and if you get, because lupins are hard to grow, you really need that sandy soil, right? And it's weird because out in the East Coast, I don't know if you've ever been in the East Coast of Canada, they grow in the ditches, like they don't even
Yeah, yeah.
try, and they grow. And yet I have so many homeowners that like came from there or visited there and bought the seeds from there, and they really want to grow it, and it like doesn't grow. It's like this
Oh
thing,
yeah.
right?
Put it in your
Um,
boulevard garden. It's happy
ah,
there. My boulevard garden, the lupins look great because it's like it's so depleted of
yes.
nutrients.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So as we wrap up, well, I do want to encourage everybody to check out your YouTube channel, and
Thank
I think you
you.
do a great job of explaining and showing things close up. And I think it sets a realistic view, like you said, of like where things are at with this stage, right? And I loved that you were able to show that, and as well as in the sun and shade. I think there's a flip. Some people think, oh, native plants are only in the sun, or native plants are only in the shade, kind of thing,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Well,
lots of great options for
lots of great
sure.
options.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm excited about learning more about the Pollinator Partnership Canada. So that is great. So is there anything else you'd like to wrap up and make sure and get your message across, and encouraging people about like what's your favorite native plant? How about that?
Ooh. Oh gosh, there's so many. Definitely Obedient Plant has a warm space in my heart. But again, it's not for everybody's garden. I love my milkweeds, really love my swamp milkweed in particular. I really love, like, again, thinking about those bigger items like my redbud. My redbud is little now, but like what it's going to be later, I'm just envisioning in the future. It's such a beautiful
Yes.
plant. Yeah, and I think that the message that I'd love to get across is just you can just start with one. Don't feel overwhelmed. do a little bit of research. What are you excited about? What colors do you want? They're out there. There's so many beautiful native plants that, sometimes, as we've said, people might think, oh, it's got weed in the name, like milkweed, or like there's always got to be weed in it,
Yes,
and so
yes.
not exactly the weed that anyone's looking for, but they're beautiful, and they can easily be incorporated in a home garden context, in a container garden context, on a balcony. It doesn't have to be big. It can start with one, and once you get into it, just be forewarned, you will probably want to do more and more, because you'll see the impacts immediately. You'll see pollinators coming to visit, different creatures that are visiting your garden. Sorry about that. That's spam, I'm sure of it.
That's okay. Yeah, I know. I had to mute mine too. So,
Apologies.
well, thank you so much. It's lovely meeting you, and I hope we can do this again. So think about
Yeah.
another thing to talk about. But I think we both are like plant educators at heart,
Oh yeah.
and I love sharing, and I love meeting other people who like to share. And please say hi to Janet if you visit that
John's
John's
nursery.
nursery,
Yes, absolutely.
for me, and tell her that you were on the show. And I've had other guests on the show from that area as well who shop there and stuff. So yeah, so I was lovely meeting you, and I thank you so much for joining me down the garden path and educating me as well, and trying to swing my little pendulum a little bit, because yes, it would be nice to have, yes, I can get, some butterflies and lots of bees, but if I got the swallowtail would be great. And if I got some of those
Mm.
specialist things. So yes,
Well,
I
thank you for
am
being open to the chat. I think that's it. We can all learn from each other. That's like my little tagline,
absolutely,
because I really do feel that way. There are super specialists out there. But it's all about like kind of going through it and trial and error and seeing what fits and seeing what makes you happy. And
yes.
so I so appreciate being on the show and chatting with you today. And I would absolutely love to do it again.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I look forward to that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our little exploration of native plants with uh Brandie, the Suburban Gardenista. And I want to thank you everyone for listening and joining me once again down the garden path. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.